Alright dudes, so the biggest update yet for Outriders is coming out today. If it's not already out, by the way, you should check your downloads. Maybe it started right now, but it comes in with all of the changes that you need for the crashes, for the bugs, for the multiplayer, a ton of improvements and optimizations and fixes to gear. So we will talk about that and more here in this video. Like, there's a pretty extensive list of patch notes right here that we will go over, and like, yeah, this is the biggest one yet, so let's jump right into it. Now, quickly going over some of the highlights, what you should expect from this. First of all, a number of crashes throughout the game, a number of issues, bugs and crashes, especially associated with the multiplayer. They've resolved an issue that could cause players to get stuck in the sign-in screen, and lots of resolutions for gear, mods, skills, quests, level and lightning bugs, by the way, and lots more on top. So by the way, if you want to check it out, we have the full thread right here. So we have just released a significant patch for Outriders, more on that further below. We will also cover that in a little bit. As you will know, we've been spending a lot of time on our characters and inventory restoration process. It has been hard to provide an exact date on when it goes live, but mainly because it has hovered on the very threshold of releasing for some time, but a small number of edge cases have forced us to reiterate and retest the process several times over. The greatest difficulty we've been facing in particular relates to giving characters the correct item levels, as item levels are calculated using 3 different variables, which is character level, unlocked world tier and highest completed challenge tier. The complexity of these 3 variables together on individual affected characters is taking some time for us to get right. Our tests indicate that restoring higher level gear than they should have leads to further character corruption, so we are not able to issue a blanket one size fits all solution here, which actually makes a lot of sense. So it's more complicated than it seems at the first glance. So long story short, while they were trying to put that restoration process in place before the update, unfortunately is not possible, so we have made a decision to release the patch today so that the players can benefit from its fixes while we continue to iterate and work on the restoration process. So I'm really glad that they actually went with this approach. But let's go over the fixes, and it includes rebalancing. This is the first time I'm seeing them, so let's jump right into it. The most important of them all are going to be the rebalancing. So AI snipers now give players more time to dodge their shots. Another rebalance, they reduce the amount of knockbacks from creatures in the Stargrave expedition. There is now also a greater delay between spawns and a reduced number of the offending creatures, which I think only is applied to that Stargrave expedition. Kinda wish that this was applied to all of the enemies of the same type in other expeditions as well. Now, they've also fixed the bug where a skill damage improvement mod on gear with a higher level than the player would actually reduce damage when used at a lower world tier. This might also be one of the culprits of why you would feel weaker when scaled down. Fixed the bug that was causing a number of mods to not properly trigger their on-shot, on-critical shots effects if said shot was a killing shot. They've also fixed the bug that caused the tricksters hunt the prey, thanks so much, skill to not teleport but still go into cooldown. So yes, tricksters rejoice because we can finally play the game properly. But the last one that is important here in the highlights is the FOV. For the configuration, the slider now is increased from 90 to 130, which is really awesome, as you can see way more onto the screen. Now let's jump into the actual patch notes. There's a full list right here. I will not cover all of them, but I will cover the ones that are a bit more important, starting with the general resolutions that apply to all of the platforms. And this includes a number of crash fixes throughout the entire game. Another one is for the sign-in issue at the login screen, which I know a lot of you guys have had with that. They've also fixed several lightning, shadow and reflection issues within levels and cutscenes, and general improvements including fixing the collisions, the textures, LODs, and a ton of other stuff in there like ground, various floating assets. Also resolved a number of situations where the players could get stuck in the game world. Now the camera movement is another one. It has been improved during various cutscenes when smoothing is enabled, especially this is true when you're doing the kill animations on captains. That was some of the worst camera work I've seen so far, so hopefully it's also on the list. They've improved visibility of the crosshair and the visibility of the tutorial pop-up notifications. Another one that I'm sure you will be glad of is the fact that side quest icons will no longer persist on the map after completion, and the crosshair will no longer disappear when looking at allies, both of which were pretty annoying. Another one, they fixed edge progression blockers and objective issues in numerous main and side quests, and they fixed an edge case issue whereby swapping characters could lead to a loss of the player's inventory. But here is what brings us to the more important rebalance to the leveling / scaling multiplier system, and both of these were adjusted to be way better. So the system will activate one level later when your average gear level is a minimum of 3 levels higher than the enemies that you're facing, which is up from previously only 2 levels. Outgoing damage will now also be reduced less, and improvements were made to incoming damage scale, meaning that players will feel more powerful without completely eliminating the threat of enemy NPCs, which honestly sounds like a good change. Conditions that will trigger the systems have been cleaned up, which will eliminate unintuitive behavior such as damage increasing when using low level weapons, which is like one of the things that never made sense about it, when just like using a low level weapon to deal more damage onto a higher level enemy. And there's also a bunch of UI scaling stuff in there and reduced sensitivity for the PlayStation, and they've also resolved the crash that could occur after the opening cinematic on the PlayStation, by the way. And this is also accompanied by overall code optimizations on top. But I want to talk about the multiplayer, and there's a bunch of stuff in here that sounds really awesome. The first one was that the privacy setting now is set by default to close, which was previously open, but I believe they also did this already in the previous update, so it might just be added on top without reason. Now they've also fixed a bug that could prevent clients from joining the host, and also they've resolved a performance issue that appeared right after loading into a co-op game. Like for example, you could all of a sudden have a ton of stuttering because you just connected to a co-op game, especially ones that were already happening. Also, the loading times for players' gear when joining a co-op session is also improved so that your character doesn't appear semi-naked for a split second or a couple of seconds. Fixed a bug where clients could load into a corrupted lobby if the host lost internet connection whilst loading into the game, and they fixed an issue where the host would be unable to select a story point that other clients had not unlocked. And specifically, they've added a notification that now will be displayed to the host, warning them that the clients may not have unlocked that part of the story, kind of like maybe a spoiler warning, which sounds really awesome. And clients will now properly receive the story mismatch prompt when joining a host. And yeah, they fixed a ton of other bugs in there with the multiplayer, like getting stuck at joining sessions or internet connection error, and also getting stuck in certain expeditions or maps or missions when doing them, especially in multiplayer. So you can go ahead and check them out. They're not that common, by the way, but still pretty important if you want to check them. The next one is going to be about crafting, gear, skills, and a ton of other stuff on top. Rebalancing of crafting, cost of improving rare to epic, and leveling up epic gear from level 1 to 30 have been lowered. This will make improving items cheaper in the early game. They've also fixed a bug where a skill damage improvement mod on gear with a higher level than the player would actually reduce damage when used at a lower world tier. And they've also fixed a bug that caused the UI to display a 0 in the preview when upgrading the Hell's Ranger's weapons. And the rebalancing part of the crafting is really important, by the way. Making rares to epics cheaper is going to help a ton to transition into CT15 with low buy characters, though again we did post a video guide on that as well. For the trickster, we already talked about the Hunt the Prey being fixed. so that you no longer not teleport behind targets and get a cooldown when it happens. They've also resolved instances where Hunt the Prey could be used to teleport to unintended locations. Hint hint, this is likely going to be the camp plant where you could teleport basically from the elevator all the way up from the elevator to the lowest floor by simply teleporting to those enemies, so I believe that is one of them. Also the Trickster's Vanitor's Knife mark, which was there was a bug that was causing it to vanish after casting Hunt the Prey skill onto the marked enemy, so that was unintended. And also a bug whereby the Move Groove mod, Anomaly and Firepower buff icons did not appear correctly onto the HUD. For the Pyromancer, there's a bunch of fixes in here, only fixes, no rebalancing. One of them is for the bug that was preventing the Pyromancer's Feed the Flame skill from applying the Ash status effect to Screechers. Another one was where the Pyromancer Phoenix Nestling skill occasionally granted the player the incorrect HP in Multiplier. It now grants the correct 50% HP. Also a bug that was causing Pyromancers to exit cover after using the Thermal Bomb skill. And finally, one that would cause the Pyromancer's Boots of the Lava Leech legendary gear item to not include the appropriate mods in case that ever happened to you. For the Devastator, we have a bunch of other fixes in there too, like Perseverance mod, damage reduction buff not correctly ending after the Golem effect, so Golem effect is fixed, which is likely going to be on the item as well, or at the very least that's what's implied right here. Another one is for the Devastator's extra Quake mode, which sometimes provided more than one extra skill activation at the end of the fight. One for Lurkers affected by the Endless Mass skill reappearing on top of the player if you walked under them was another bug. A crash that could occur if you boulder dashed into a wall, and a few others with the gravity leap and so on, and improved visual effects, especially with reflect bullets. Now for the Technomancer, there's only like one rebalance change here. The minigun mod Massacre, which was changed in the previous patch, had its duration reverted to its original value, but will now only stack up to 6 times. So yeah, part of that nerf was reverted, but it now only stacks up to 6 times. There's a bunch of other stuff in there for the bug fixes, with Toxic Lead armor mod was not triggering properly if an enemy was killed via a skill, which is one of the main reasons why you were running out of bullets even though you were using the Toxic Lead. So that sounds actually really awesome, especially for multiplayer, should help quite a little bit, or if one of your skills or damage over times manages to kill that enemy as well. There were other changes in there too, but the one that I will concentrate on last for the Technomancer is the fact that the Perpetuum mobile weapon mod was also replenishing the Tools of Destruction minigun ammo, so that was fixed. If you were doing with that, if you were running with that build, yeah, that's gonna be fixed at the very least, but I think that the other one is still working with yeah, the Toxic Lead probably still works, but I'm not really sure. Now finally, for the gear and mods in these sections, we have a few bugs that was causing certain mods to not properly trigger on shoot or on critical shots. I believe crit stack was one of that, so that might be fixed in there as well. Also bugs that cause legendary set bonuses to not show the correct items being active in the armors and details is another fix, and a ton of other stuff in there as well. Now there's many other fixes in here that I could go over, but I will focus on a few of the rebalance changes here with the enemies, as these are also very important. We talked already about the AI snipers and the knockback in the Stargrave expeditions, but there's a few more. With the Molten Akari, for example, the jump attack was still damaging players who successfully dodged its AoE, so players successfully dodging the AoE will no longer be damaged is one of these. Another one is for the Chrysaloid. The buff icons applied to the Chrysaloid boss will now remain in between the phases, which is gonna make things way easier. And for Yagak, yeah, there's going to be one for the unlimited healing for the Devastators when using Impale on him, which was really annoying. And another bug that prevented the Broodmother from dealing damage to the player with a melee attack while standing on an elevated platform located on the left side of the encounter. So I'm not sure what that is about, but it is what it is. And yeah, they made a ton of other changes in there that you should check out, a ton of like even AI changes to make the AI pathing a little bit better, especially for the Berserker enemies, and a few more on top. The only ones I will talk on a final note are going to be about the performance issues, specifically specifically to the PC. So there's going to be a bunch of improvements to the FPS, to the overall performance of the game. Another one whereby cutscenes would lock to 60 FPS even if the players have selected a higher frame rate, which would in turn also lock the game for you. Sometimes in a number of occasions it will also cause that. So there's quite a number of these and other resolutions that were implemented in the new update. Overall, really big, looks really well. The only thing that remains is to check it in game and see if it's also as well over there. But this is it with the most important changes in the new update. As always, if you want to stay up to date with anything Outriders related, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.